Saludos, and thank you for joining us in this episode of Spotlight, featuring two prominent actors with a beautiful trajectory with us at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater and a growing presence in New York City, as well as regional and national stages. Jesús Martínez, of Dominican descent, is a versatile performer with an impressive career as an award-winning stage and voice actor for film, television, and radio. Joél Pérez's acting career has expanded over the past years with prominent award-winning roles off and on Broadway. Joél and Jesús have worked together at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, have gone on to perform together on a national theater tour, and continue to build their respective careers. Joél by further expanding into playwriting, and Jesús as a popular voiceover actor. On behalf of Pregones and Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, we hope you enjoy this episode of Spotlight.
My name is Jesús E. Martínez, and as an artist, I define myself as a stage actor, a screen actor, and a voice actor. And every now and again, I like to dabble in sound engineering. It's like a passion I picked up when I was a starving artist.
I'm Joél Pérez. I am an actor, writer, and comedian. I realized that I wanted to be a performer kind of late in life. But I was always a singer. I grew up in church. My father is a pastor of a Pentecostal church, and so I grew up singing and playing the drum. But being an actor was never really an option.
The moment I decided that I wanted to go into this business, an artist, I must have been like 8 or 9 years old, and I was watching the Flintstones. And I was growing up in Dominican Republic, and we had cable, so we had TV in English and we had TV in Spanish. So I would go over to the English side and watch the Flintstones in English, but then that same day they would have the Flintstones in Spanish. And me as a kid, that blew me away. It was like, wow, you can do this in both languages? So I started imitating the characters of the Flintstones, Inspector Gadget, Heathcliff, like all these old school 80s cartoons, until I ultimately made my own cartoon in my own mind. And then it was like, I wish I could do this and get paid for it. But then when I got to college, that's when it really solidified my desire to become an artist, because I auditioned for a play about guerrilla warfare in Mexico. And I started as a supporting character, and then something happened to the main character, and the director enjoyed my performance in my original character so much that he promoted me into the lead.
I grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts. In high school, I started doing plays and musicals. And even then, though, I was still like, this isn't a real job, because no one ever had that job that I knew. And I ended up going to college, to Tufts University, as a chemistry major, and I was supposed to be a doctor. So I was pre-med for 2 years. But then in college, a friend of mine was music directing a musical, and she knew that I sang. And she was like, you should audition for it. So I auditioned for it, and I realized I have to rethink my life. So that kind of led me on a path to be like, how can I do this as a career?
My focus these days is in voiceover, and working in voiceover allows you to portray so many different characters of so many different ages and personalities, you know, because like they don't see you, they only hear you.
Uno, dos, y tres. Will you work together with us? Trabajemos juntos. We have to warn the villagers about El Gigante.
And that allowed me to do very outlandish characters. Like I've done so many different personalities, like from 100-year-old curmudgeons to supernatural beings from another dimension.
What I love the best about being a performer and a writer is telling stories. I love exploring people and histories that are different from mine. Good theater and writing and film helps us create empathy for other people. It helps us understand that we're so much more similar than we are different, and hopefully it changes you and makes you want to be a better person. And that's when people can leave the theater a little different than when they came in. That's what I love.
So my creative process, it really depends on the medium. For example, if it's a stage show and I'm doing a character based on history, I do the homework. I read biographies, watch movies on the character. I'll write my own backstory. If it's a fictional character, like why is this person here? What does he want? What pushes him forward? For a voiceover character, it's kind of similar, but I do a lot of referencing of other pieces of media. Like if I have to do like a certain animated character, I'll watch other shows that kind of correlate, because I have an anime collection and an animation collection like you will not believe. It's like the New York Public Library of animation in my house. Another thing, when I'm learning the role, I will record the whole script and record the dialogue, and then I'll talk along with the dialogue. So not only is it just reciting lines, but you know the truth behind those lines.
My creative process is very improvisational. As an actor, I kind of start with the text. I start with what the playwright has written, and then from there go through a given circumstances exercise to understand the history of this character that I'm playing. And then in the room, when we're actually rehearsing it, I love to play. I like having a spontaneity about the choices that I'm going to make. And I read a lot. I get inspiration from music and from books and from TV shows and stories that I'm always like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. And then I'll just research it. And then sometimes that is something I get inspired to write about. Or in conversations that I have with people, I sometimes draw a lot from my real life and use that as inspiration for a character or a circumstance that then I give myself the freedom to use that as a jumping off point and then see where it goes. Some of my favorite performers are comedians. You know, there is nothing like the feeling of making an audience laugh. It's like immediate gratification that when I'm doing like really serious roles or really dramas, there isn't that same interaction with the audience. Usually it's about who you're on stage with, and the audience is kind of more of a voyeur of that experience. Whereas with comedy, the reaction is right there. And it's just like, it's like an energy, adrenaline rush. The kind of work that I like and the kind of work that I like to write and create is stuff that really toes the line between comedy and tragedy. I think when we laugh, your defenses are down, you're comfortable. And I think that's when stuff can really hit. Last year, I was working on Kiss My Aztec, this new musical by John Leguizamo. And I play Pepe, who's one of the lead characters. And that show's just a straight up comedy. And it's so fun. So I'm excited to be a part of the movement to change that.
I'm very observant. Everywhere you go, everywhere you see, there's drama happening. You know, from the guy buying a bagel at the deli to the 80-year-old woman trying to figure out how to text her niece. That's a story right there. And so I draw a lot of inspiration from everywhere, from my surroundings. One of my influences growing up was physical comedians, Jerry Lewis, Charlie Chaplin, Cantinflas. When I was in college, I found myself reading more and more Latin American authors, especially Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He was like one of my favorite, still is, because the way he writes is the way that my brain works, the way my imagination works. But I also read more about the diaspora of all the Latino cultures around us, because that was something that I wasn't too aware of when I was much younger.
I find inspiration from a lot of places. I find it from my culture, being Puerto Rican. Like, that's a big part of who I am and how I grew up. A lot of people in my generation feel like there is a gap in our understanding of the island. And so as an adult, I've been like radicalized against the colonization of Puerto Rico. And so I'm like just angry. You're like, why did I not know this? Why aren't we talking about this? Why isn't this a thing that it's all, I feel like it's just swept under the rug. So that's something I try to figure out I have a play that I'm working on that's about that experience. I find inspiration from my from my faith background. I'm not Christian anymore, but that really informed my development and why different people have different relationships to faith, and that relates to my sexuality, how I grew up in an environment that doesn't really accept gay people, but then my parents are loving people. And so that kind of gray area, I think, it's great. There's a lot of good stuff in there for art.
I really do feel that the level of integrity in the work, also in the sense of community with front of house and just everybody involved in the Pregones family, makes people feel happy and makes people leave the theater feeling lifted.
It speaks to our current moment here in the world where people need to escape, and I love that this theater provides inspiration and a reminder of our beautiful culture. I feel that it is a place, a sanctuary for artists, Puerto Rican artists, to develop their craft, develop themselves as people, and it provides that for not only Puerto Ricans here in New York City and abroad, but also it provides that for other Latino artists and also artists from the LGBTQ+ community.
We are so proud to be recognized as one of the leading Latinx theater ensembles in the nation. And we're home to more than 20 artists ranging from choreographers, actors, designers, playwrights, who continue to share their stories and their talent on our stages, both in the Bronx and in Manhattan. The support of our donors not only helps to keep the legacy that Miriam Colon set forth here at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, but also impacts artists, for instance, in Puerto Rico, where we have been able to institute grants, emergency grants, to artists that were affected by Hurricane Maria, and now most recently by artists who were also affected by the earthquakes in Puerto Rico. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being part of our family.
Pregones is actually one of the places where I branched out even more, and it taught me that I can do way more things than I thought I could do. For example, I didn't do as much musical theater until I started being a member in Pregones. I didn't train for that specifically, so when I jumped into that, it was like, But at the same time, it was such a nurturing environment that that fear went away of, like, you know, learning how to sing this part or doing this type of choreography in context of the musical piece. And if it wasn't for Pregones, I probably wouldn't be doing a show called Kiss My Aztec. And it gave me a deeper meaning of how important this medium is, not only to myself as an artist, but to also the community.
My very first acting job in New York City was at Pregones. I had a friend who was friends with Sol Crespo, and Sol was working on this show through Pregones called Texting for Life. That was like a show that we traveled to different schools in the Bronx to do a forum theater piece about domestic violence. And then I reached out to Sol and I got an audition appointment. And at the time, I was living in Harlem, like right across the bridge near the Pregones Theater in the Bronx. So I just like walked here. I like walked over the bridge and I walked into this theater and I was like, what is this place? This is so cool.
My most cherished moment in Pregones. That's a very easy one. So there was a show I was doing called Piojos. And this was during a time where I was with this woman that I very much love deeply, still do. And so I had decided to propose to her at the end of the show. Like, she came to the show, she saw some of her friends from college, and she was kind of like, what's going on here? But then after the curtain call, I presented a poem about her. There were projections behind this very screen, actually. And at the end, I bent on one knee and gave her the ring, and the rest is history. We've been married for over 8 years. Another highlight, we had been doing this show called Hey Yo, Yo Soy. It was a collection of poetry by Jesús and that's where I met Joél Pérez. And so we were performing this show, and one of the writers of Kiss My Aztec, John Leguizamo, was looking for people to read this script about the Aztecs overthrowing the conquistadors. And so John Leguizamo connected himself with Rosalba Rolón. And then Rosalba Rolón said, well, I have this group of people who are performing at PRTT. If you want to come down and check them out, we can take it from there. And so we were performing Hey Yo Yo Soy, and John said, I want those guys. And then after that, we had been working on this show called Kiss My Aztec for the better part of 7 years.
I have never been in a space that has both the art that I want to make and the culture that I'm from, and they're mixing together. It was so fascinating to me. And so that's why I love coming back. You know, it's about a kind of family and a kind of home, an artistic home, and a place to explore.
When the pandemic started, it pretty much shut down anything that had to do with the arts. As a voiceover actor, I had already been working from home, but on a very smaller scale. And so a lot of my contacts, my managers and agents said, you're gonna have to beef up the quality of your studio. And so I bought all of this equipment. Once I told everyone, hey, my studio sounds like this, I have been working even more. So it makes you more creative. I've done an audiobook, I've done a couple of commercials, I've done ADR work for a bunch of TV series and movies, and I'm currently working as a recurring character in an animated show that comes out in a year. So during the pandemic, there have been a series of reckonings going on throughout, social reckoning, racial reckoning, and a reckoning of the entertainment industry, particularly in the theater and in the film industry. And these problems have been going on for a very long time. You know, like anytime a Latinx character is portrayed, it's a very pigeonholed sort of stereotypical role, or an African American role, like the sassy black nurse, or the magical Negro, or the very hotly tempered or super hyperactive Latinx character. And there hasn't been, there have been some inroads, but more can be done. More stories of those different cultures can be told.
The pandemic has been really interesting for me because I've been in New York about 11 years now and have had such blinders on about work. I'm always juggling 30 things at once because that's also how you make a career in this industry. So it's been really strange to be forced to stop, to be forced to just like sit down, and everyone is doing it. Everyone's experiencing this, and we're all experiencing it together. So it has actually been an interesting time to really stop and focus about, what do I actually want to say with the art that I make? What do I want my legacy to be? Because of the pandemic, a lot of work that I was going to be doing in theater has been translated to digital. Like a lot of things are online, and I think that's actually been a really fun experiment. You can reach so many more people that you can't reach in a theater, just for the logistics of tickets, like how many people can fit in a theater and how many shows do you do. I'm an artist in residence at a theater, Ars Nova, in Manhattan. And four other collaborators and I, David Mendizabal, Emma Ramos, and Guadalis del Carmen, the four of us pitched this project that was kind of inspired by Sábado Gigante, and using Sábado Gigante as a framing device for a piece that explores what it's like to be Latinx now. I'm actually like, oh, this could be a fun way to kind of develop a Latinx sketch comedy show, like a sketch comedy variety show that uses the things that were problematic about Sábado Gigante as our jumping off point to interrogate those things. And then aside from that, I have a handful of plays that I've been writing, and now it's a lot of, like Zoom workshops of those plays and getting actors in a room digitally to read it out loud. At the surface, the concept of equity, diversity, and inclusion is great. Like, we should have a more equitable landscape for theater artists and creators across the board. There are theaters and communities that are doing that work already, and it's been important for me, at least, to realize that we need to support those organizations that are already doing this work. And I kind of take issue with predominantly white institutions getting lauded for becoming diverse when there are people who are already doing it. Also, a lot of this is about resources. It's about money. It's about who has access to pay their artists. And we want to create a just and equitable theater when our society isn't just and equitable.
This used to be our fertile land,
the Aztec Empire, green and grand,
until those fuckers washed up on our sand. Those white people on boats. White people on boats. White people on boats. They be local. This raggedy hood is where pyramids stood until white people on boats.
Joél Pérez is actually a hero of mine. Like, he is one of the most talented, most versatile, most active artists I know. When he's on stage, he always tells the truth. And he's funny as he's a funny as hell guy. Like, a very creative mind who is going far in this business. Well, I'm very excited of this animated show I'm doing right now. I do look forward to performing again after this pandemic passes. I had been working on this play called The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde at Repertorio Español. From what I understand, when the pandemic passes, that show may come back again. And that is a show that I just loved performing every night.
I've known Jesús Martínez for a long time, and he is always 100%. He always jumps in 100%. And that is so exciting, and it's so invigorating. So I'm always just like, oh man, I gotta step up. From that, you get such exciting work.
So what if I'm a lamb and not a lion? So what if what I'm selling she ain't buying? I swear to every god, Aztec and Mayan.
To the young folks that are interested in becoming a working artist, it's exciting, the prospect of going on stage to dance, to sing, to tell a story. But there's a lot in the background that has to come into play. So always know that things aren't gonna go the way they are, but that's not to be discouraging. It just means, oh, maybe if I take this path to my north, this might work. But you'll learn some very valuable lessons in the process.
I guess my gotitas de saber would be to don't be afraid to look bad. Don't be afraid to fail, because you're gonna fail a lot. And this takes time, but develop confidence in yourself and your abilities. So I'd say just like keep working, always do the work. Every day do something that's toward your art, whether that's reading a play or picking up a book and reading, or listening to some music that inspires you. Having sort of short-term goals is better than trying to, because you can just get so overwhelmed by being like, I want to make a career as an actor. That's just like so vague. So there's more concrete steps to get there.